Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Change of Shift podcast, where nursing meets the internet. I am your host, Sean. Thanks for tuning in. This podcast, we solve problems, review topics, and share actionable information that encompasses the professional and personal lives of healthcare professionals and nurses. Subscribe, download, and listen while I discuss current events, impactful stories, and invaluable lessons for the front lines of healthcare. Thanks for tuning in for my returning listeners, and welcome to the new people. Thanks for taking time out of your day to listen to my wonderful voice. So, like every episode, we're going to do a quick recap of last week's episode. This is episode 20. Holy cow. Recorded episode 19 last week. This is episode 20. Sticking to the weekly format right now, although I think I have a few episodes on my lap that I'm trying to get out there sooner than later. So, talking about last week. Last week's episode titled 4 Ways Nurses Can Overcome the Imposter Syndrome, episode 19. For those of you who don't know what the imposter syndrome is, it's basically that syndrome and or feeling that everyone's going to figure out that you don't know anything or that you're faking it. This particular quote-unquote syndrome was pretty applicable to the profession of nursing. So I talked about 4 ways that you could overcome the imposter syndrome. Everything from faking it until you make it, meaning you just keep trying because guess what? We all started scared. You're going to focus on what you bring to the table and not what you don't know. Own your own success, which is a tough one. You earned your place where you're at because not everybody can do this job. And last but not least, my last suggestion was to lay it out on the table. Being wrong doesn't make you a fake or any less qualified. It simply means you are a learner. Got a couple good pieces of feedback on that particular episode, so thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. This week's episode, or should I say today's episode, we're talking about dating. Dating a coworker. Dum, dum, dum. I don't know why, but this came across my keyboard, monitor, take your pick, floated across my internets several times over the past week. Funny thing is, I've been at this game now for going on 10 years, and I'm almost positive I've blogged about this a handful of times. So this was an easy one to talk about. Blogged about it on my personal blog, and I've blogged about it with my previous employer. So you could Google my name and look for some topics related to dating a coworker or dating a nurse. And I got a couple blogs out there that I've talked about it. So why not add to the list and talk about it in the podcast? Does a cupid have a place at work? Have to give a disclaimer for those of you who don't know. New to my world of nursing, new to anything about me. I'm married to a nurse. I've been happily married to my wife for 10 years. We met in nursing school. We dated in nursing school. And we got married about 4 months after graduation. And the rest, as they say, is history. I'm not saying it's been easy. I'm not saying it's been a downhill ride. I couldn't be happier. But enough about me. I am living proof that it can happen. I'm living proof you can date a coworker, ergo marry a coworker. So I may have a little bit of preferential biased thoughts when it comes to dating a coworker. So let's just dive right into this. We're going to preface this concept with dating a nurse is pretty awesome. For me, being married to a nurse is pretty awesome. And the main reason why is that they get it. For those of you who are married to a non-healthcare person, if your significant other doesn't work in the healthcare world, they don't get it. They truly don't get it. You don't even have to be a nurse. Could be you're a paramedic, respiratory therapist, physician assistant, nurse practitioner, wink, wink, a nurse, anything related to healthcare. And I think I'm talking more along the lines of people who work in a hospital type system who have to work shift work, because I'm overgeneralizing again. Most of the profession of healthcare, they do work shift work. Okay, I take that back. I don't even know if it's most, but in my world, it's always been shift work. But if you date someone who has worked in the healthcare field, who has worked as a nurse, who has walked in your shoes, they get it. They understand why you're late when your schedule says, I work 7 to 5, but I don't make it home until 7 p.m. They get it. They don't have to worry about me explaining the why to me being late. I simply just say, it was one of those days. And when I do get home, my significant other doesn't need a reference book for my conversations. They understand all of the quirky terminology that I use, as evidenced by and rationale, and the bazillion acronyms that we talk about, COPD, LFTs, BAL, CPR, BLS, the list goes on, and then we make up our own, which is even worse. But regardless, my significant other, my wife, she gets it. She doesn't have to take notes. The final thing that is cool or awesome about dating someone who is in your related field is that they get HIPAA, the good old-fashioned HIPAA hippo. Does anybody even still use the HIPAA hippo? Or I'm showing my age on that one. HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. So, privacy. They get the privacy. So they ask me a question, and I try to explain it to them, but I can't give them any of the patient identifiers, and they understand that I can't go into detail. They get the gist. So that's my take on prefacing dating or being married to someone in the healthcare field. And in my area of expertise, it would be in nursing. So let's discuss the warnings. Before we get into the nitty-gritty here, and before we get into the tips, we got to talk about some warnings. You got to have a warning label. You got to have a warning label attached or front and center on the topic of dating a coworker, dating a nurse, dating someone in the healthcare field. So for me, and for those of you who are dating someone who does your job, like if you are a nurse dating a nurse, doctor dating a doctor, respiratory therapist dating a respiratory therapist, blah, 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 blah. The first warning is, guess what? You're dating yourself. Long, awkward pause there because, yes, dating yourself is an awkward concept, but bear with me. Let me finish. They're going to have the same awkward, I'm using the awkward again, awkward tendencies that you have. You have a lot of them. The longer you do this job, the more you acquire. Guess what? They have them too. You also can't pull one over on them. They've been through the trenches with you. They've walked in your shoes. So you can't, create some sort of scenario that they know is a bunch of BS. And finally, when you date a coworker, they're unlike everybody else. Think about the people you work with. Two extremes when you're talking about the pole, the outer poles of characteristics. You have people that you love being around, and you have people that you just avoid at all costs. So if you're dating a coworker, where does that person fall on that scale? Remember, everybody has their cliques, and you have your mortal enemies. So are they on either extreme? All right. That's the first warning. You're dating yourself. Second warning. If you are going to date a coworker, you truly are not going to have time away from each other. And that just sets you up for all kinds of badness and sets you up for failure because you tend to overdo it. It's kind of like young puppy love. If you remember when you were a young child, young kid, teenager, you had to spend every waking moment with that significant other. You called them on the phone. I mean, I don't even know how dating goes on these days with the social media that we have. But in my time, showing my age again, you woke up, you went to school, you saw them all day at school, and then and depending on if you played sport. So then we saw them during practice, and then you see them after practice, and then when you go home, you call them on the phone for hours on end. Whoa. Complete and utter overkill. Third warning, it's a career risk. Let me say that again. It's a career risk. And I'm not making this up. I'm not over-exaggerating or embellishing. You can make or break your career by the people you work with. So if you're going to date someone that you're working with, you really need to think about, are they worth your job? Now, I'm not saying that you're going to get fired. No. Let's slow your roll. Let me finish my explanation. What happens if you date this particular someone and weeks, months, maybe even years go by, and you're both still working the same jobs at the same place, and all of a sudden there's a falling out? It blows up in flames. There's a nuclear explosion. And 9 times out of 10, when you end a relationship after being together for however long you were together, is it ever amicable? Very rarely. Very rarely do you guys shake hands, pat each other on the back, and say, "It was fun. We'll see you later." No, choose the opposite. People get mean, they get nasty, they get vindictive. Once again, refer back to the warnings. Refer back to the concept of dating a coworker, the good and bad, talking about the cliques and what happens if you hate each other. Work is going to become just a tad bit awkward. And I don't know about you, but now, once again, I've been married too long to remember. This is just a fond memory now. But the last time that I broke up with someone, anytime we crossed paths, it was like staying as far away from each other as possible. Well, guess what? You work together. How are you supposed to do that? This is what I mean by career risk. Because if the scenario is as bad as it can get, someone's going to leave. Someone's going to get pushed out because you're not going to be happy in your job. And sadly, I have seen this happen. So thankfully not for me, because I'm good. I don't have to worry about that. But keep it in mind. And finally, and this is just, I'm throwing this out there. What's their stance on coffee drinking? I mean, come on. This is seriousness. We're talking about, the lifeblood of healthcare. Coffee. Do they drink it or don't they? Now, I'm not saying that they have to drink it. That's not what I'm saying. Even though I'm currently drinking a cup of coffee, and if you follow me on the internet, you know how much coffee I do drink. What I'm saying is, if you're going to date said person, do they share the same outlook as you on coffee? They better. Because, holy cow, you're just setting yourself up for all kinds of havoc there. So, you either both like it or you both don't. I must say, though, my wife doesn't drink coffee, so go figure that one out. Moving on. Okay, now to the meat and potatoes. 5 tips for nurses who are going to choose and date a coworker. Here are my 5 tips for success. First tip, dance for a while. And what I mean by dance is maybe actually not say yes and date, but feel it out for a little while. This is what I call the dance. It's a term that my friend coined a while ago when my wife and I were dating back then, because we were on again, off again, on again, off again, on again, off again. Still figuring each other out. You need to dance a little while. Maybe it's not love at first sight. Maybe it's lust. So if it's lust will wear off. So think about it. You spend a lot of time with your coworkers. Maybe it's just infatuation. So I suggest you dance for a while. Make sure this is something you both want to do. Second thing, if you're going to date a coworker, you need to establish some ground rules. For instance, do either one of you possess a leadership role? Is there a possibility of one supervising the other? What are the fraternization policies in your employment, your place of work? Places that I've worked, you can't have a supervisor dating a person that they're delegating to, because you can have preferential treatment, whether on purpose or by accident. So preferential treatment is a no-no. Oh, big no. Big no, because then you're opening yourself up for all kinds of arguments between other supervisors and your coworkers. And another ground rule I'd be talking about is work schedules. Are you both going to continually work together, or are you going to work opposite shifts? When are you going to see each other? It's kind of important. Third tip, separate work from play. Oh my God, you need to tone down the PDA. Please don't let me explain PDA. And while we're talking about PDA, please, just please, don't call each other pet names, at least not at work. Hold that for when you're outside of the job. Just keep your hands to yourself, or treat them like a coworker, not like the person you're dating. And while we're at it, let's think about showing any kind of affection. For instance, having lunch together or saying hello or goodbye. Small pecks on the lips or the cheek, perfectly acceptable. But let's keep it to a minimum. Once again, coworker, coworker, coworker. And finally, just make sure you stay respectful and professional. This isn't about you and your significant other now. This is about your coworkers who have to work with you. So, keep your PDA in mind. Number 4, don't bring work home. This was the key to maintaining sanity in my home, was not bringing the garbage home from work. Coming home, having all that stress, holding all that in, or allowing the negativity to spill over into your home, okay? If you're going to bring it home, if you want to talk about it, you need to decompress. By all means, do it. But I would find a way of setting limits or setting rules. For instance, if you both come home at the same time, or one comes home, then the other comes home, vice versa, is that person gets to talk about work for a set number of minutes or one single topic. Not saying that you shouldn't be talking to your significant other, but don't let it turn into something negative in your home. Finally, and this is a big one, this is a huge one, and this is for anybody out there dating anyone. This doesn't even have to be healthcare related. Is you need to maintain relationships outside of your circle of work. Don't make your life all about the person you're dating, and don't make your life all about your job. For me, nursing. So don't make your life all about nursing. Have something other than your job and other than that person. This is twofold. One, maintaining sanity. You gotta play as much as you work, okay? You can absolutely have fun with your coworkers, letting loose, having a good time. But try and establish relationships and maintain relationships that have absolutely nothing to do with work. And secondly, it's a backup plan. Think about it. If you do crash and burn and it does blow up in flames, all of the friends, all the mutual friends that you had is going to become just as awkward when you're out socializing with those friends because your ex may or may not be there. Well, that's it. 5 tips. So we talked about the great thing about dating a nurse or dating a healthcare coworker. I gave you 4 warnings, and then the meat and potatoes, the 5 tips on how to hopefully succeed when dating a coworker. In the show notes and in the blog post, I'm going to also include a couple links that I thought were entertaining and enlightening. Some posts from random websites that I thought were comical at the very least. So, thank you for tuning in for all of my listeners who are repeat customers, and to all of my new listeners, thanks for joining me. If you like what you heard, be sure and tell somebody. Tell a coworker. Ha. Tell your family, tell your friends, maybe even share it on the internet. This has been the Change of Shift podcast, where nursing meets the internet. We solve problems, review topics, and share actionable information that encompasses the professional and personal lives of healthcare professionals and nurses. You can find me out on the internet on our website, thechangeofshift.com. My podcast is out on all of the podcatchers. You name it, we're out there. All you got to do is Google thechangeofshift.com on any podcatcher that you possess. Or you can just head on out to changeofshift.com, have a subscribe button out there. You can also listen to the podcast right from the website. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great day. And as always, check your own pulse first.